This is CS952 Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and in this video we're just going to talk a little bit about the Bootstrap responsive grid. And for years web developers have struggled to find the best way to create content that works great on small format devices like cell phones and larger devices like desktop computers. So the consensus is to use a grid to divide the viewing area into an equal number of columns. And like other responsive frameworks, Bootstrap uses a grid of 12 columns, and these 12 columns are placed inside a row. Now, before I go any further, I want to state that these rules of responsive design only come into play if you have more than one column of content. If your web page consists of one image or one column of text, you do not really need to worry so much about the responsive framework. So I'll give you an example. On our tutorial site, if we go to our history page, we basically have one large column of content that goes all the way across the page. And you can see that as we resize our page, we don't really have any issues. If I switch over to view this site as if we were looking at it on an iPhone, see, it continues to work just fine. We can scroll up and down and pretty much get to whatever we need. Of course, in reality, we end up with websites that have multiple columns of content. So, for example, if we go to our media page on the tutorial website, let's go look at media, we have two columns of content. We have a div on the left, which is 8 columns wide. We have a div on the right, our audio, which is 4 columns wide. And then when we reach a media breakpoint, we stack that content on top of each other. We'll get into a little bit more details about some of the ways that we're using the responsive grid layout on our tutorial website. But let's talk a little bit about the 4 principal sizes of Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is set up to accommodate 4 different sizes of devices. And we call these 4 different sizes, we start off with extra small, and that's small devices like phones. Then we have small devices like tablet computers. Then we have medium devices and large. And these are abbreviations: XS for extra small, SM for small, MD for medium, and LG for large. We use those abbreviations for the names of our classes. Let's look at how device size changes the layout. We're going to start with a simple layout of 2 columns of text, and I've got something open up in Dreamweaver for us to look at. Viewed on an extra small device. Now, if you're not that familiar with Dreamweaver, across the top here we have the Visual Media Queries bar. That's what they call this, and we can show or hide this depending on whether or not we like it. I like this feature a lot, so I usually have it always turned on. But we have the Visual Media Queries bar, and everything that's here in the green, whenever we have our live view scrubber in the green, it's showing us what our website would look like on an extra small device. And you can see we get a little visual feedback as to actually how many pixels wide this content is. So if I go to around 350, that would be like an iPhone 4. The next size up is our small devices, and then we have our medium and our large devices. So we're starting off with 2 columns of content side by side on an extra small device. Now these represent 2 divs, and each div is a member of the class. We've assigned it to a class. We can see down here it says column, extra small, 6 columns wide, col-xs-6. So these 2 columns, they fit fine next to each other when viewed on an extra small device. So what happens when we move to a larger device? Well, really nothing happens. I mean, it looks good on the small device, it looks good on the medium, looks good on the large device. So we really need the power of the Bootstrap framework when we move content from a larger device to a smaller device. Consider this: a compact car fits nicely in a compact parking space, and you do not really anticipate any problems parking a compact car in a space marked for SUVs or trucks. The problem comes when you're driving a large truck and the only available parking space is for a compact car. As this image illustrates, that's when things get to be difficult. So imagine we have content specifically for a small device, which is larger than an extra small device. Okay, small is like tablet, extra small is mobile phone. So what happens when we go the other direction? I've got an example of this in Dreamweaver. So if I click over here I have two columns, and they are both members of the column small 6 class. So this div on the left is 6 columns wide. This div on the right is 6 columns wide. Again, as we move and make our viewing area larger, no issues at all. But what happens when we cross from the small to the extra small layout? We go from the larger format device to the smaller format device. Without any other instructions, as soon as we cross that line, you're going to see that the content stacks one on top of each other. And we do this, why? Because when we have a mobile phone, we've decided that the horizontal area is limited. It's, whatever, 600 pixels wide. But the vertical area is unlimited. We can just keep scrolling up and down as much as we want to. So when we have more content than we can fit in the width, we start to stack things vertically. That's where we start to add up our content. Let's look at our home page, okay? On our home page, we have 3 columns, and each column, down here at the bottom, contains a glyphicon and a little text about some page on the site. It's about gallery, history, and media. And these also are set to column, and in this case they're column medium 4. If we go to look at our index page in Dreamweaver, okay, these are column medium 4. And I've made a few little changes here. Let me undo my changes, right? So if I click on this div, I can see it's column medium 4. So this is 4 and 4 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12. So when we're in our medium view, they stack very nicely. They sit very nicely against each other. As soon as we go below the medium viewport, as soon as we go to the small or extra small, they stack on top of each other. And this works fine, no doubt about it. This looks good on a mobile device, and this looks good on a desktop device. Now you might wonder, hey, I understand that when we go below medium, all these components stack on top of each other, but I don't think that's necessary. I think it would look just fine to have gallery next to history for a small device, and then put media on the bottom, have 2 things next to each other, and then maybe when we go to extra small, have them stacked all on top of each other. And we can certainly do that. That's pretty easy to do. I'm going to click on this div, and this div right now is a member of the medium 4, but it can be a member of more than one class. So if I go to my quick tag editor, I'm going to say not only is it a member of column medium 4, but I'm going to say it's a column small 6. So when we're in the medium viewport size, it's 4 columns wide. When we're in the small viewport size, it's 6 columns wide. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do, let's just double check that. Yep. I'm going to do the same thing for this div. I'm going to go to my quick tag editor, and I'm going to add in another definition. I'm going to say make this column small 6. Okay? So this is when we're viewing this on the medium. This is, let's go to our medium size, right? We're going to use a live view scrubber. We're in our medium view. I can see the MD right up there, medium view. This is 4 columns, this is 4 columns, this is 4 columns. As soon as we go under medium view, this will be 6 columns, this will be 6 columns. And since we haven't told the web browser anything different, when we go below medium, this remaining div is going to take up 100% of the space available to it, meaning it's going to be 12 columns wide. So let's see what happens. Large, medium, and then when we go to small, sure enough, now we have 6 columns here, 6 columns here, and then 12 on the bottom. And then when we go from small to extra small, they're all stacked one on top of each other. So you can see there's a lot of ways we can get creative with the Bootstrap framework to accommodate different kinds of layouts. And this is a very effective way of managing to create content that's going to work on cell phones, tablet computers, and desktop computers. This is what responsive website design is all about. And there's a few things I just want to mention. There are some conventions that we have to follow when we put together a Bootstrap responsive web page. All of this content that we've been talking about needs to be inside of a container. So if we go up to the top of our web page, we're going to see that all of this content that we've been working with is sitting inside of a container. So if I go back here to live view, we can see that all of our content, we have a container right here. Everything's in a container. Let me go open up my DOM panel. Okay, so we can see that we have a container. All of our content is inside of a container. Inside of that container we have rows. And then inside of that row is where we actually have the divs that are the columns. And we use this format so much that if we go to look at our insert panel in Dreamweaver, we have pre-existing Bootstrap components that will drop in a container or a container fluid. You can read a little bit more about the difference between container and container fluid. Container has sections that are fixed in width, and container fluid, nothing is fixed in width. So if we look at our home page on a web browser, you'll notice that the navigation, we have content that goes to the far left and to the far right of our web page as we resize far left and far right. But the content that's here, that's sitting inside of a fixed container, you'll notice that that text stays pretty much the exact same width even as we size and resize the page. It's not until we get down to the extra small view where all of our rules are set aside that this text will actually, the amount of content that we have showing will change as we resize. When we get down here, everything's up for grabs. So we have two different kinds of primary containers, fluid and fixed width containers. Inside of containers we have rows, and then inside of the rows we have those columns. So I hope this gives you a little insight into how the Bootstrap responsive grid works.